Well, thanks for bringing me in today. I appreciate it. You know, I have had the privilege to speak at the Sophomore Institute 2 years in a row now. Who in the room has been to the Sophomore Institute in the last 2 years? Anybody? Okay. Got one? Okay, good. So if I do some of the same things, you're not going to be too hard on me, right? Okay. You have to remember what I even did, which is probably unlikely. But I've been asked to come back and deliver a little talk at the Sophomore Institute, which happens in August, and the whole idea there is that most sophomores obviously are in the mode of starting to at least think about career and think about resume building and think about networking and those kinds of things. So we talked a little bit about this 10 skills. What are the 10 skills that I think companies, businesses of any kind need from you? How many freshmen do we have in here? How many sophomores? Juniors, senior. So 4 or 5. Okay, so mostly freshmen and seniors. So any time is not too early, because what we're going to talk about today a little bit is how I, as a sales trainer and coach of high potential performers, and also as a business owner and one who talks to a lot of business owners, what are they looking for? Because you're going to be out in the market here, if not in the next year, in the next couple of years. What are people looking for, and how do you position yourself in a way that is more likely to get them to notice you? When I was in 8th grade, I played basketball. I loved the game of basketball. I played here at Depauw a long time ago, back in '78. They just started making calendars back then, so that's how I know it was 1978. But I love basketball. And so when I was in 8th grade, it was the year that the teams went from an A and a B team down to one team, 12 people. Who plays sports or who has played sports in high school? So you know what cut day means. You know that's the day where people get cut and you find out who makes the team and who doesn't. And I'd played so long, I loved the game. I was very confident, maybe even cocky about whether I was going to make the team or not. And so it was a Friday afternoon in October, and this was cut day, and this was the day that Coach Farron put up on his bulletin board outside his office the little 8.5 by 11 sheet that had this year's team on it. And so at 3 o'clock, the bell rang, and all my buddies and I were flying down into the hall, and we see this long hallway with this little piece of paper. And we know that holds the future in our hands. And so we got there, and I got to the top. Was one of the first ones there, not because I was fast. Maybe they were just walking, trying to be cool, and I was so excited. But I got to the top, and I started reading down the list of names that were there. And I read all the way down the list: Shepke, Sharp, Ingledow, Polly, all the names of my buddies. And there was no Bill Caskey on that list. But being a fairly careless guy like I was then, I probably missed it, I figured. So I went back to the top again. Shepke, Polly, Sharp, Lefevre, McAloon, Welch, no Bill Caskey. Bill Caskey had been cut from his 8th grade basketball team. Now, we've all been cut from teams. We've all had situations where we either didn't make something we really wanted to make, or we got literally cut, or sometimes we get thrown off a team because we don't behave in the right way. But the point of the story is that that was the first time in my life that I'd really experienced kind of rejection and that feeling of inadequacy and that feeling of, really? I don't measure up? I can't be on that team? How can I play with these guys for the last 5 years? I can't make that team? It was very disappointing. So that introduced me to this concept of rejection. Also introduced me to this concept, which we're going to talk about today a little bit, which I think will change the entire dynamic of how you build your resume, how you network, and how you find a job if that's your pursuit after college, if not after graduate school. And that is, who chooses whom? So I want you to write that down somewhere on your sheet, and I will be arrogant enough to say sometimes there's something I say worth writing down, so I'll point to you and say, write this down. And that's one. Who chooses whom? You see, we live in a culture that's kind of a choose me culture. From the time that we're little kids in grade school and the teacher says, we okay?
I'm just going to get him one.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Oh. Wait, actually. From the time we're a little kid, I got to start over now. Okay, I was in 8th grade. No. From the time we're little kids and we're in elementary school and the teacher says, who knows the answer on page 14? What do? If we know the answer, what do? Oh, choose me, choose me, choose me. I used to coach basketball, little kids basketball when my daughter was young. And it was amazing. I'd say, okay, who has the answer to this question? What happens when the forward passes to the center? And they'd all go, oh. And then you'd call on them, oh, what happened? No clue. No idea what I don't know. Yeah, I think I have hair bows. It was weird. But we want so badly to be chosen. We want so badly to put our hand up in the air and have someone say, yeah, I like that. You're on my team. Remember at recess, I don't know if you ever had recess, I'm dating myself, but in elementary school where you played kickball or dodgeball or something and two captains had to pick. Were you ever the last ones picked? And you end up thinking, geez, do I even want to play or not? I mean, we got down to 5 and then 3 and then 1 and you're set. But we love to be chosen. We love to be selected. And so we live in that culture of we want to be chosen. When it goes to National Honor Society, when it goes to coming into a college like this that's very distinguishing about, what's the word? Discerning about who they picked, who they choose to let in. All that stuff is about you getting chosen. But in the job market, it's not. And if anybody comes in here and tells you it's about being chosen, it really isn't. What is it about in this job career path market? Is it them choosing you? Of course not. Who is it? It's you choosing them. It's you choosing your career, making a wise choice there, and then it's you choosing what you want to do with it. And then eventually, when you're in the interview process and the resume building, it is your decision. Now, that may be different than what you've heard, but I have seen too many people who put themselves into a I hope I get chosen mode, and by the very nature of that mode, causes companies not to want you. So today what we're going to talk about is how you can change your framework a little bit and change your mindset and do some actions, take some actions, position yourself properly so that people are seeking you out. It's a lot better if you have, and I'm going to use the term job offers, even though I know that seems like a long way away, maybe not for seniors, but it would be nice if you had several job offers to choose from which to choose, proper grammar. But what typically happens is we take the first one that's offered because it's the only one on the table. I don't want that for you. You guys are all better than that. What it takes is some pre-work. It takes you getting ready for that. So that when you are a junior and you start networking, you start getting internships and you're in your senior year and you're starting to interview and you're reaching out to people and sending your resume, you have the choice of where you go to work or what you do. Okay? Is everybody comfortable, not necessarily with the fact that you choose, but everybody understand the concept of I choose versus they choose? Okay? We'll talk to you about how to get there, and I'll start to introduce you to some concepts here. So one of the things that is essential is creating an action plan. That's what we call this, and this is kind of a recap of some of the things that we talked about here a couple years ago in Sophomore Institute. But I'm going to give you 5 things that I think are really important for you to start working on. I'm going to give you some assignments as we go through this, and then we're going to come back, and the final thing is create an action plan. So step number 1 in this is you've got to, and you can write this down, I might have put it under the high performance section there, is get your mind right. You've got to get your mindset right. We spent a lot of time talking about elite performers and high performers, whether it's athletics or acting or singing, and we say, what is there about these elite performers? The, Tim McGraw and the Dustin Hoffman and the Michael Jordans and, the Peyton Mannings and all these amazing athletes and performers. And I don't want to just say athletes because it's performers of all kinds. Beyonce in the pop world. What is there about these people that makes them the best? What is there about these people that makes them the best, that makes them worth $20 million a movie in Tom Hanks's case? What is there about these people? And I think if you start to study what these people do, is they have a different frame of reference. They have a different mindset about what it means to be the best, about the commitment that it takes. Michael Phelps, is he going to be in the Olympics in a couple years? Is he still swimming? He didn't retire yet, I don't think, did he? Oh, did he retire? And then I thought maybe I heard he was going to come back. Let's take Apollo Ono, since I know he's already won a bunch of gold medals. So the question is, what does it take in the mind of Apollo Ono to become a world champion and stay a world champion when probably at some point He could have just let it go. He had the medals, he's got the endorsement. Does he really need to win another 4 or 5 gold medals or 2 or whatever it's going to be? And the question is, what happens inside the mind of these elite performers? How do they see themselves? And this is a question I want you to ask yourself as you go about the business of resume building and networking and career planning is, what is your mindset? So that's one thing that I think is important. You've got to have the right mindset. We'll talk a little bit more about what that is. Second thing is, on your list of 5, is positioning. Positioning. When I say the word positioning, what conjures up in your mind? What do you think I mean by that in the context that we're talking about here today? If you're positioned right, what does that mean? Some of you taking a marketing class maybe, or yes, sir. Putting yourself in the best position to succeed. Good. That's good. So let's say you can't use the word to define the word. So positioning is what then? You're positioned best, but you can't use the word. So what's another word for that? You're in a place. You're in a frame of mind. In the world of business, positioning is typically about someone else sees you in a place. So what's your first name?
Allison.
If Allison comes in to my office to interview, and let's say that I'm a Depauw alum and I've heard about her from this class, and maybe Aaron has talked to me about it or something about her. She comes in and she's like, oh, Mr. Caskey, I will do anything to get a job here. I need a job so bad. I am so desperate. I'm living out of my car. I have no money. And if I don't get this job, my parents are going to kill me. Can I please have this job? She has positioned herself as what? Desperate, needy, almost a beggar. Usually when she puts her hand, because I've seen you put your hands like that. No, I'm just kidding. She's a beggar. Who wants to be around a beggar? Who wants to hire that person? Answer, no one. No one wants to hire that person. I'm not going to do her any favors by hiring her. In fact, as a hiring manager, I will stay away from that position. So what if she comes into my office, though, and says, Mr. Caskey, I understand you are looking at some people for this year. I want to tell you I'm graduating, and I have no idea if what I do and my value can impact your company and impact you, but I'm hopeful that we can have a discussion about it. If at the end it makes sense to continue to talk, fine. If at the end it makes sense for me to go on and move on my merry way, that's totally okay too. Now how is she positioned? Desperate? How? How is she positioned? What are some words that would describe that positioning? Allison, it's you that did it, so what? Oh, that's right, it was a role play.
Like open, I guess.
Open?
Competent. Planning, maybe.
Open, planner, maybe. What are some things that describe the human aspect of how she just approached me? Confident. Flexible. Yeah, in a way, she's being very authentic and very vulnerable. See, we always think that if you say to someone, well, you know what, if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. And we think, well, but that's very vulnerable. It's very attractive. Because the fact is that she's not going to be right for every position. And I may have a position that's not right for her. But if she comes in desperate, I'm not going to consider her for anything, nor am I going to refer her to anybody that I know. So how you are positioned, and that type of positioning happens right there face-to-face in the interview. But there's also the positioning of how does she even get wind that I'm looking for somebody? Or how is she positioned on LinkedIn? How is she positioned on Facebook? How is she positioned in any blog that she writes or any production she has created? Positioning is a whole gamut of things. Start working on your positioning now. Not as a senior. God bless you, you're here. I'm glad you're here. I wish we'd have caught you 2 years ago, but that's okay. Work on your positioning starting as a freshman, sophomore, starting now. And it's not too late as a senior. I'm just saying it's better to start now. So we'll talk about that. Again, I'm going to leave about a half hour for Q&A at the end and some wrap-up. So we'll make sure we talk about that as we go. But I want to give you a sense of what positioning means. It's what you do to get in a place so someone else says, you know what, I'd like to talk to you. Okay? Third thing is strategy. It's a big word. Everybody throws the word strategy around. Is there a marker around here that I could... oh, here it is. Here it is. Let's see. What's the best one to do it? This over here. You're going to have to turn your head here. About there. So here's where you are right now. Here's where you want to be. Today it's 1 of 14, and you're a sophomore. And in 2 years, 2016, you're going to be a senior, and you want to get from here where you are to this, which might be a $100,000 job. It could be in Colorado Springs. It could be whatever this vision of where you want to be is. You've got to start to think about that and build that. The strategy are all these things in the middle here that help get you down this path. So what might be a strategy if you want to earn a lot of money, have a great job, be selective, whatever those things are at the end, what might be some strategies that you use to get you there? Stay out of trouble. That might be one. I mean, that's a simple one, and probably one that you all would do anyway. I don't know that you need to write that down. But you know what? Behave properly. Watch what you post on Facebook. Watch what you do on social media. Watch what you do with your friends. Just behave properly. It doesn't take much, but the instant you go down this path of misbehaving, it shoots your whole strategy. So that might be one. I'm not suggesting it is, but that's an example. What's another strategy that you need to be thinking about today if you're going to get from here to there? Experience. So that could be internships, or it could be leadership positions on campus, could be internships, whatever constitutes experience. That would be one of these. You might have 3 or 4 things on this strategy marked there. So that would be something. What else? What's that? Presentation. Is that personal presentation? Yes. How you present yourself. That's good. This could be physical presentation. Do you present yourself physically well? I mean, do you dress right, etc.? Or it could be emotional and mental presentation. You can have great physical appearance and be a wreck inside, and that's not part of a good strategy. So that's good. What else? I got one. Is this the wrong marker here for this? I feel like I'm running out quickly, I think. I'd say get in the game. And write this down. Let's see if I might have a marker. Marker's kind of an old technology here, isn't it?
Unfortunately, last week we brought all of them.
That's all right. If you can find another one, that's fine. Get in the game. What do you think I mean by get in the game? Yeah.
Like, don't be afraid to put yourself out there.
Put yourself out there means what?
Talking to others, looking for positions.
Yeah. Talking to adults. You just got off Christmas break. You're going to be going home for the summer here. Hopefully, it's going to warm up at some point. You're going to go home for the summer. Are you in the game this summer? Are you talking to other adults who maybe own businesses or who are in a place where they can refer you and network with you? Are you talking with the friends of your parents who might own businesses or who might be in good positions? A lot of times I find that people, and this doesn't just go for college students, this goes for adults, they don't get in the game. They're never in the game. And if you're not in the game, you're not going to be noticed. You're not even going to be taken seriously if you're not in the game. And sometimes it's just a matter of saying, you know what, this summer, thank you, you can just put them there, thank you. I'm going to talk to 12 adults who either own businesses, who I know, I'm talking about cold calling, it's people you know who are in positions that they can help you. And they want to help you. But you got to get in the game. They will not call you. They will not call you. So get in the game might be a strategy. So for you, what does that mean? It might mean network, talk to hiring people, talk to owners of businesses. It could be something as simple as going to there are networking events you can go to. And I'm not a big fan of these because a lot of times I find there's just a bunch of people looking for jobs. But the right networking event you can go to and you can learn. You can go talk to the speaker who speaks. Come up to me afterwards and talk to me and introduce yourself to me. You've got to get in the game. I know, it's terrible. In the game. So that might be a strategy for you. What's another strategy? Let's just talk about a couple more. Another strategy. Think about it. Here I am today. Here I'm going to be tomorrow. What's another strategy? You guys can help. You guys can pitch in too if you want. Yeah.
Maybe like responsibility.
What's that again?
Responsibility.
Responsibility. Yeah, like as in take responsibility. Yeah. Good. I think we all know what that means.
Do your best while you're at Depauw.
Do you what?
Do your best while you're at
Oh, do your best. Yeah. Yeah. Best at Depauw.
I was gonna say use your resources, like in this scenario, like go to career services or.
Very good. You have resources available to you here that people didn't have in the past. I'm looking at you as I'm talking. Hopefully I'm not speaking out of school. The question is, are you using this? You're paying for them. You are paying for these things. Are you using them? So that would be a great strategy. I love that strategy.
Well, 2 years seems like a pretty long time, so maybe you make smaller checkpoints along the way to make sure you're on the right path.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I like about this model is in a way, I don't know if you can see it, all these things across the top here are checkpoints. So you could literally build this. This might be a good exercise for you guys to do, is build this on one piece of paper and call it career planning checklist and create your own strategies because everybody's going to be different and then have some little checklists along the way here and keep it up, keep it in a folder, keep it in front of you. I don't want to make this obsessive. I don't want you to obsess about this, but I want you to get to the end of this and have offers from all over. I want you to be choosing where you want to go. You can't do that if you don't do these things. Sorry, you just can't. You're going to end up here and you're not going to have done these and then you're just going to be one of the thousands of people who are interviewing for the same job and you all look alike. You all look alike. No matter what color your skin, whether you're male or female, all interviewees look alike unless they've done this. Then you start to distinguish yourself. Yes, did you have another one? Okay. What else? What other strategies? I've got one here that's an elite performance strategy. Practice. Practice. Do you know how many times people go into interviews, and I'm going to use the word interviews in a very loose, it's a very loose definition. So if you go home, let's see, who else can I pick on? I picked on Allison enough. What's your first name? Christine. What's your age, freshman?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you go home at summer, and let's say your goal is to talk to 12 people about just network a little bit with them, you're going to go out to lunch or coffee or whatever, you need to practice that conversation. Because if you just show up and say, oh, well, you know, this guy, Caskey, came in and I was supposed to do this and I don't really want to be here, I know you would never say that, but if it sounds unintentional and non-deliberate, you're not going to get anywhere with those. So you've got to practice that discussion. Sit down with your dad or your mom or somebody here at school and say, okay, here's the scenario. I'm meeting with Bill and he owns a company and my purpose in this is to find out if he has any suggestions on people I should talk to based on my major and my area of interest. Well, work it out. You know, comedians, when they go up on stage, remember Seinfeld? I don't know if you remember Seinfeld, but he's one of the highest paid comedians, makes $50 million a year, the highest paid comedians, mainly because of the reruns and the licensing. But he would go out to these comedy clubs in New York, and what would he do with his material? Test it, try it. He'd change the line, he'd change some words, he'd change the punchline, he would change the story slightly until he got it perfect. Now when he goes out, he gets $30, $40, $50, $60,000 to do a stand-up gig, and what does he know? When he walks on stage, all his material is perfect. And now he can focus on being creative with the audience. He doesn't have to use it, he just knows he has it. When you get in front of someone, either in an informal, informational kind of meeting, which I presume you're talking about here, or in a job interview, you have to have practiced. If you haven't practiced, it'll show. And you'll get this. Wow, what's your first name? Anna, well, Anna, it was very nice meeting you today. Thanks a lot. I'll walk you to the door. Can I get anything on the way out? Do you have a card or something? Yeah, we'll get back with you. See you later. And that'll be it. That'll be it. And all that work went for nothing. So even if you have situations, in fact, the best place to practice is in non-pressure situation. If you're going to be interviewing for the CEO of Procter & Gamble, probably unlikely, but let's say that you have something really special as a 22-year-old, you're going to be CEO of too much pressure. That's not the time to practice. The time to practice is when you're talking to your next door neighbor and he or she is a vice president of marketing with a company and you're having coffee with him or her where it's no pressure. That's the time to practice this stuff. Okay? Clear? Clear as mud. All right, what else? One more. Think about what else elite performers, let's think about the elite performance model, and saying Tom Hanks isn't calling people up saying, hey, got any work for me? Got any scripts I can read? What's he doing? What's Tom Hanks doing? He's waiting. He reads some scripts. No, it's not good enough. No, not good enough. Ooh, this one's nice. Captain Phillips, this is kind of cool. I think I might want to do this one. He's sitting back waiting for them to come to him, but he's done all the pre-work. So think about elite performers and say, what do they do that I could replicate here in my little strategy circle, strategy path? What else do they do? Think about elite performers, elite athletes. Yeah?
I guess they kind of create a name for themselves.
Okay. So we'll call that personal branding. But they are out there. They're doing things. I don't know how many of you know Pat McAfee, who was punter for the Indianapolis Colts. He got in trouble with the law about 2 or 3 years ago. I don't know if you remember. He was swimming in White River, in Broad Ripple, and he was all, tanked up, and it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and he was out there swimming. Got arrested, took him to the lockup. I heard his story. I saw him speak once, and he had to call his dad, who was in Cleveland or something, and say, hey, you know what, things aren't going very well over here. And McAfee had a good contract. But he took that from the depths of Pat McAfee. Now where is he? Now what's he doing? I don't know if you know who he is, but what kind of personal branding has he done? Does anybody know? He's doing work for Subway. He's a spokesperson for several companies. He's got his own radio show. He'll turn this lemonade, or he'll turn these lemons into lemonade. But it all has to do with how he chose to react to that thing. That he wasn't dealt that hand, he made that hand, but he did personal branding. He said, how am I positioned out there in the future? What else do elite athletes do? Wow, yes, they study. They study. Can I close this? They might study the company they're going to interview for, in your case. They might study the industry. They might study careers in that industry. They are knowledgeable because they study the game. You could even say that the game you're in is not necessarily industry selection, but it's also how do I carry myself? How do I present myself, as you said? How do I interview? What are some tips on using LinkedIn? Studying this is not odd. Studying this is the future. Studying this means the difference between you ending up here in 4 years or here. So I like that study. Something else they do is they learn how to say no. They learn how to say no. They learn how to really focus on what they want. And it's easy in our society to be distracted with all this stuff that happens around us. And sometimes we just need to say no. It's the hardest thing, and I will tell you, it's hard for me. Sometimes I need to study instead of watch Biggest Loser. Just use it because last night I had that choice. And I watched for a while. I'm like, what am I doing sitting here? I got to go read. I got to go study. I got to go do something. Because an elite performer only has one shot. So if you're well studied, if you're in command of yourself, and you're ready, you're going to be welcoming those high pressure interviews. Okay, so we've talked about get your mind right. We've talked about strategy. I'm going to stop here and say, what did you learn? What's one thing that we've talked about either so far or in that little section there that you can say, you know what, I could do better at that, or that really hits home for me, or I can do that, that's not that difficult? What'd you take from that little 15-minute section? Yeah.
Personal branding, get your name with it.
Okay. And what are you going to do with that?
Try network.
Okay. Personal branding. So what are some components to personal branding? Before you even network, how are you going to, and some of these kind of overlap too a little bit, like what would be some components of personal branding? Not just you, but anybody want to share. Yeah.
I guess the university you attend, or the specializes in something that you do.
Okay. Okay. Your experiences are part of your branding. Your LinkedIn picture, I hate to say be very tactical, LinkedIn picture is part of your branding. Your resume, part of your branding. What you wear, part of your branding. I'm not saying go out and buy a $6,000 Armani suit. I'm just saying what you wear reflects you and it represents you. What else is part of your personal branding? How you speak. Do you speak up? Do you look at people in the eye? Are you deliberate about your questions? So if you say, is it Liz, right? Liz, I'm curious. I know you've been here for a few years. How did you get here to this place where you are, to this role you're in? Or are you saying, hey, how'd you get here? How'd you end up here? You've got to be deliberate. When you speak, you've got to be deliberate. That's the best word I can think of. I know there's others that are better describe that, but when you're in the presence of someone, that's part of your brand. How you speak. You could get straight D's. I don't know if you graduate from Depauw, straight D's, but if you speak well, somebody's going to say, that Allison, she's good. She's bright. Nobody cares what grades you get. I know I shouldn't say that in a university setting, but at some point, your grades and your SATs, none of that stuff matter. What matters is when you show up in my office, are you present? Are you branded? Do you speak deliberately? Do you carry yourself well? Do you ask good questions? Are you practiced? That's the future. That's the future. So I want you to do well. I want you to get straight A's, but at some point, it ain't the straight A's that are going to get you here. It's all the other things around it. Chances are, if you're a straight A student, you're a high achiever. If you're a high achiever, you're going to do all this anyway, sort of naturally. What else? What are the lessons here? On branding or on strategy? Turned into a lecture. I don't want it to be a lecture. I want you guys to hopefully learn. Got a lot of notes here. Got some awesome notes. You can't read them, but they're awesome. Awesome. What else? What else have you learned? Yeah, a couple. Anybody? Yeah.
I learned to get in the game, meaning something like we've been talking about is networking, and we're going to learn how to do that. But do that, I guess, with the purpose behind it.
Yeah.
Instead of you talk about talking to people and making go like 12 names per summer or something.
Good.
If you talk to those people, it's not just talking. You walk away with a business card or with an email or on a name-to-name basis. Instead of just
Good point.
networking and networking.
Good point. Here's another thing. Do you have a business card? Answer, you better. You better have a business card. You can get them printed for $25. Your business card reflects your brand. People don't hang on to the resume. It's too clunky and if it's digital. But you hand somebody a nice business card, excuse me, nice business card, that's part of your brand. What else did you say there that, how you follow up with someone, part of your brand. Follow up. Did you write a card or did you send a text? Answer, write a card. It's okay to send a text, but it better be followed up with a personal card that has your name on it, that's engraved, or that in some way says, this is Allison, what's her last name?
Stevens.
Allison Stevens. Now I get that, and I see that she has taken the time to write a card. That means everything. One of the fellows from about 2 years after me who was inducted into the Depauw Hall of Fame, his name is, oh my gosh, I just forgot it. He's CEO of FTD Florist. He was, yeah, right. Yeah. Anyway, trust us. There is a guy who has done this. We had him, I do a little work with the Fight Elts, and we have speakers come on and do web speakers, speaking. And what's his name? What's his name was on. Very, very close friend. He was on, and I said, as you talk to these juniors, sophomores, what are some of the things that you would recommend doing? What should they be thinking about? He goes, I will tell you, I wish I had this on tape, the number one thing you can do is send thank you cards. He said, I know the president of Home Depot. I know the president of GM. Now, a lot of these people came up through the ranks at Reebok or Adidas or wherever he was, Nike or wherever. But he keeps in touch with these people. He says, it always starts with a thank you card. He says, people remember that. It might sound weird. It might sound odd. It might, you probably have visions of your mom saying, come on, you got to write thank you cards. But this will make you a lot of money. Thank you cards could make you rich. So get some. You can go to Kinko's and get them. They're, I don't know, have your parents give it to you for graduation, $100. Well, do it before graduation. But always send a thank you card or a card that just has your brand on it. Good. Thank you for that. So, yep, that's good. You prompted me. I prompted you. Excellent. What else? What else have you learned here? Yes, sir.
When we talk about getting the game, and then behind you how it says don't be a loser, that just kind of makes me think that you need to realize that this whole thing's a competition. And
Okay.
if you realize that, the better chance you have of winning it.
Yeah. It kind of is a competition. I think it's a competition first between me and myself. Because if I'm afraid to get in that game, that's got nothing to do with anybody on the outside. That's me. But you're right. At some point, it's either you or her. And if you've written the card, you'll get it. But if you've written the card and you've stood up straight and you've been intentional and you have a business card and she's a loser, you're going to get it. It makes you feel good, doesn't it? Gosh, I feel so good when I leave when Bill Caskey comes in. Call me a loser. What else? Any other lessons? Get in the game. Don't be a loser. Like her. No. Get in the game. Be intentional. Be deliberate. Who has business cards right now? Oh, you guys. Oh. $25. Get you business card. Yeah.
What do I put on my business card?
Stud. Chief stud. I don't know. I don't know. Your name, your email address, your phone number, and maybe your year of graduation. That could be it. Doesn't have to be some kind of magical one-liner. Use a quote. Pick out a quote or a quote from a movie or a quote from a book or something and put on the back or put down below. Something that speaks and says, this is who I am. Like one of my favorite quotes is, let's see if I can find it here. One of my favorite quotes is this one. Oh, shoot, it's not on here. No, never mind. Says he gave a graduation speech. You probably know who I'm talking about. He gave a graduation speech, and he said, first off, I want to congratulate all of the people graduating with honors. Well done, good job. And for all the C students, I want to tell you, you too can be president of the United States. Who was it? George Bush. George Bush was a C student at Yale, but he became president of the United States. So that quote, isn't that quote cool? And yeah, way to go, but if you're a C student, you can really do something. But that quote, I wouldn't suggest you put that quote on there. But that's a quote I would put on there because I was a C student here. Not proudly, but I was. So yeah, your name, graduation year, whatever. If you have an area of interest, that's fine too. If you have a blog, put that on there. If you have a LinkedIn, which you will, put that on there. So now I have a physical representation when you leave my office of you. You can even put your picture on there if you want. It's kind of weird, but you can try it. No, I mean, if you're in a position where your picture matters, like you're interviewing for a television job or a photographer or something where it fits in, go ahead and put your picture on. But yeah, get business cards. That'll be your goal in the next week. Is there a Kinko's and a UPS, or what is the printing? Is there a print shop here?
Yeah, there is one.
Okay. Now, is this, hopefully this is not the antithesis of what you're teaching, so I'm,
Oh, no, they heard yesterday. Now, I think the speaker yesterday undercut you by $15, right, guys? Didn't he say $10 Vistaprints or something?
oh, Vistaprint, yeah. Oh, so he already taught, okay, so you don't need to hear this.
No, I like that they get to hear
Yeah,
the same message
Yeah.
consistently. So I think it's wonderful.
yeah.
So, yeah.
See, when we say we want to be here, oh yeah, Bill, that would be awesome to have 3 or 4 opportunities and to make a lot of money and to be in a place where I love to work. By the way, you can do that. You can do that. But if you're not willing to do the things here, you won't get here. And you might blame somebody for that, blame my parents because they made me go to Depauw, or blame Depauw because they didn't do a good job with interviewing or whatever, but this is you. This is on you. So anything you can do to do these strategies and put this thing to work will pay off, will pay dividends. A business card and a thank you card could make you $1 million over the next 20, 30 years. Now for some of you, money is not important, but you can do a lot of things with money. You can give it away to charity, you can fund things, you can fund scholarships here, you can pay back your debt, you can give it to your parents, give it to me, anything. All right, so we've covered strategy. So strategy, covered positioning. The next thing is words. Words. What I mean by this is a lot of times when I coach salespeople and I coach leaders, and a lot of times leaders they'll have to deliver a message to their team. It could be a team of 4 or 5 people, it could be to a company of 100 or 1,000 people. And words really matter. How they position themselves, how they communicate, how you communicate really matters. So when I say words, I mean, what are the words you typically use when you're talking in an interview situation or in an informal interview or some kind of a meeting? Do you use the right words? Are you deliberate about those words we use, which I talked about earlier? But I think it's important that, see, a lot of times I think and I heard this at the Sophomore Institute, we say, okay, we're 22 years old. What value can I bring to the organization? I'm literally my first job. How am I going to be able to bring value to the company, to wherever I go to work? And part of this is how you're positioned, how they think of you when you come in, and words have a great deal to do with that. So language, words. Do you say you know after every sentence? Do you say like every 5th word? And I'm not picking on anybody here. My daughter is a sophomore here, and I hear her and some of her friends, and like is a very popular word. It comes up a lot in sentences. And I don't think it should. So when you practice, when you're in front of a teacher, say, look, I've got this interview tomorrow. Liz, can you help me with this? And you do it. I want her to say, you use like 17 times. In fact, my daughter, my oldest daughter, she's with a company called Radius in Indianapolis. She's in the internet marketing world. One of her friends got an interview with a company. This was several years ago. And they got done with the interview. And the interviewer said, well, I can't remember her name, Cheryl, it was very nice having you come in. You will not get the job. Let me tell you why. You used the word like 73 times in the 1 hour we were together. He literally counted how many times she used the word like. 73 times. Now, she was pissed about that, excuse my French. But what a great lesson. Because if he doesn't tell her that, she goes on to the next one and she does the same thing. Now she's starting to think, oh, that wasn't, I better watch that. I better watch my language. So again, I'm not saying never use the word like. I'm saying that your language is representative of you, and it does matter. Okay? So that's kind of an aside. I'm not going to get into that too much because that's a little bit more work. But as you're doing interviews and you're doing these things, and if you're being coached by somebody, have them tell you if I mumble, if I use the word like too much, if I'm not deliberate with my delivery, if I look away when I talk. Have somebody coach you on those things. It'll be invaluable when you finally get out and do interviewing. And this is part of this, the whole idea of practice. All right. Last thing. Action. Don't be a loser. Jump ahead here. Okay. I think the idea of what a job is today really needs to be looked at. It used to be, and still is a little bit, that, first name? Annie. Let's suppose that I'm a hiring manager, I'm somebody who's looking for somebody, and Annie comes in and she hears about the job and she calls me up and I say, sure, come on in. She gives me her resume, sends it in advance, and we have this conversation. This is what I would call slot hiring. I am looking to Annie to fill a slot inside my organization. Slot hiring. I might have a slot of salesperson open. I'm going to talk to her. I may have a slot of assistant marketing director. I'm going to talk to her. I still think that's many ways how it goes. The problem is that those aren't always the best jobs. Why do you suppose that is? Why do you suppose companies are getting away from that whole slot thing? Think about it, it's kind of a liberal arts story a little bit. When Annie, go ahead, do you have something? Just, okay.
I was going to say, one good reason that they would probably drift away from that is that in doing that, they're only matching up your qualifications with that
Yes.
position and not the company.
Yes. Yes. So here's the rule, and I want you to think about this. You can write it down if you want. You are bigger than a slot. You are bigger than a slot. And when you start thinking like that, and you'll find this with internships. How many of you have had a internship that's a real internship, not just, yeah, so you've had internships, and what do you notice about internships? They bring you in, and they teach you a lot of different things, and sometimes you can go off onto a tangent and do something that you weren't even brought in to do, but because you love it, you're good at it, they need it, now you're not in a slot anymore. So I think you've got to think of yourself as bigger than the slot. Yes, I can do the assistant marketing position, but what else needs to be done here at the company? What are some other things that you're working on? What are some of your goals? This is you asking the hiring manager. What are some of the goals that you have here? And I think that just like a lot of jobs that are available are never advertised, and this is where you can get into some pretty cool networking. If you can start networking and positioning yourself in the right way, you will find jobs that don't even exist. And unfortunately, most of us are going after the jobs that exist. I want you to go after the jobs that don't exist. I want you to create your own jobs. Now, let's stop for a minute. What do I mean by that? Anybody have does that relate to anybody, or is that just like, what are you talking about? What kind of books are you reading up there? When I say the best job is not advertised, do you know what I mean by that? Or the best job is not publicly asked for? What happens when I'm looking to hire an assistant marketing person and I put it up on Monster or I give it to a recruiter? What happens? What do you think happens to my inbox? All these people from LinkedIn and from all these places just sending me their resume. Now, how much can I find out about you from your resume? A little bit. What your name is, where you went to college, that's about it. They're all most resumes are BS, excuse my French. Now, I'm not saying you can't have one or shouldn't have one, but if you expect to stand out by the look of your resume, it won't happen. So that's why networking is so important, because you can come and network with me and we can have lunch and you say, here's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a position that'll help do this, and I'm looking for a company that can grow. I say, you know what? That's not me, but my neighbor is looking for somebody who can fill like a podcast production role and a video production role and a little marketing role. Would you like to do that? Yeah, we'll put him in touch. So now she's coming in. He hasn't advertised this job anywhere because he has no idea what this job is even called. Excuse me. But now she's set up for it. And now she calls him, and presto, before you know it, she's got a position where she's doing hopefully what she likes to do, but that job was never advertised. So as you're thinking about what you're going to do from a business standpoint and career standpoint, recognize that some of the things you'll go after are never make the light of day. They're never advertised in the paper. You kind of in that way create your own thing. Okay? All right. Excuse me. I've had a cough that has lasted forever. It will not go away. So that's one thing that I want you to think about, is that whole idea of a job. What is a job? Okay, action. Slot hiring versus problem hiring. Look to solve a problem. Look to go in and be a problem solver for a company or for an individual. That will make you a lot more money. Why do you think it'll make you more money? Why do you think going in and finding a position where you can solve a problem will make you more money than filling a slot?
Because you become more valuable.
That's right. Why?
Because you can do more things than just the one slot. You're able to help the company in multiple areas as opposed to one.
What is there about a problem that we always seek to fix? If I've got a problem inside my company of, we do a podcast. Let's say my problem is that I can't figure out how to grow my podcast base. I mean, it's stuck right now, and I can't figure out how to. We are doing it, but let's say I had this problem, I can't figure out how to do it. That problem may cost me $1 million a year to have. Or it might cost me $100,000, or it might cost me $5 million. I don't know. But if you're going in to a problem orientation to interviewing, and you start to find out from the hiring person what is the problem you're trying to fix with this, this could be $1 million problem. Well, guess what happened to what happens to what I'm willing to pay you to fix it? Does it go up or down? As the problem goes up, what I'm willing to pay goes up. Now, you got to be careful with this. Or, well, what's the problem? My compensation is based on what the cost. The problem is you're not going to say that, but I want you to know clearly what is the problem this person is trying to solve by hiring. And when you do that, your value shoots up, especially if you're a good match for that, if you're a good fit for that. So the third thing then is, we're not going to talk about that because we don't have time, but under sales positioning, which is part of this, the sheet that I'm handing you, because we did it last time when we spoke last year at this. And that is that, in a way, you're all in sales right now. You might not want a career in sales. That might be the furthest thing from your mind. Thank you. You can tell I was coughing. I need water. But in the next few years, and really beyond that, you are in sales because who are you selling? What are you selling? You're selling yourself. And I don't think the way to sell yourself is to walk around with your chest out saying, hey, look at me. Look at how great I am. I think a better way to sell yourself is go at it from a problem-solution mentality. Position yourself, get out in the market, let them sell you on why they need you rather than you selling them on why you need them. Did that come out right? I think it did. So if you're doing all the strategies, if you're doing all those things, when you get in front of someone, whether it's just at an event, at a cocktail party, maybe you're just at a Depauw networking event or something, and you meet me or you meet somebody, you're on. It's showtime. And if you've done all the preparation and you position yourself right, you will come across as credible and desirable in the job market. So I know the word sales might offend some of you because you don't want to be in sales. Frankly, I think it's a great profession. If you're considering it, you should talk to me and I'll help you over the edge there. But at least for the next few years, you're selling. You're selling yourself. You're not giving yourself away. You're saying, look, this is what I'm looking for. This is who I am. This is what I want. This is what I'm good at. Do you have something that might be a fit? Is there a fit? Okay, so that's the great repositioning. Here's one that we talk about a lot, and I don't know if you all talk about it in this room. There's a lot being written now, and I don't know if I was ahead of my time or I probably am still behind, but it feels like there's this shame of the resume. The shame of the resume, it doesn't give me any example of your work. Anything you can do to give me an example of your work, a portfolio of your work, is very helpful. Even if it's a paper you wrote here for a grade, that's okay. At least I get a chance to see your writing style, to see how you put thoughts together. Because after 4 years at Depauw, you should have some portfolio. And when you send your resume out, you better be linking to it because that's going to be much more interesting to me and to a hiring person than just your resume. Now, what do you suppose could go in this portfolio? And yes, resume would go in there. We'll draw a pie chart here. Resume in your portfolio. What else? What's that? Projects. Yeah. Maybe there were one or two projects here at school that you were on a team. I assume most of the projects are team building or teamwork. That's fine. You don't have to have done it all yourself, but put it up there, put it on a website, put it somewhere where I can look at it and watch it and see it. If you've produced anything like a film or an audio package, or I know media is big here. If you've had a radio show, do it, record the radio show. Let me hear what you've produced. And you've produced a lot. By the time you're a senior here, you have produced a lot of stuff. Question is where is it? This is why I like to catch students in their freshman and sophomore year, because this is the time you need to start building your portfolio. As you finish a project, think, is this something I can use in my job search, in my career search? Is this something I can use? If it's a one-page paper on the history of Greencastle or something, I don't know if that's appropriate, but if it's a significant 5 to 7 page essay, or it's a series of essays, or you've written an article for the Depauw or for the yearbook, put it in. And literally, I mean, get a folder, like a manila folder. I don't know if I have any, but you know what they look like. Physical folder. It's my action folder. You know how I can tell? It says action on it. But just a folder like this, and just put portfolio on the front. Put it somewhere in your room or in your house or at home, and every time you think about it, say, what can I add to that today? Because at the end of a couple of years, you start to look at this, and it's got 3 or 4, 5 things in it. Now you've got something. Now you can link your resume to this online portfolio. You stand out. You don't look like everybody else who's just sending a resume and following up with a phone call. I'm not dissing resumes. You're better than that. You can do better than resumes today. I would even suggest part of your portfolio is a video of you talking about your story, telling your story. Everybody in here has a story. How'd you get to Depauw? What were some mountains in your life? What was a highlight of your high school years or your college years? What project were you involved in that you just loved and you could get lost in? And what was a valley? Where did you have to battle back from? Did you ever have a setback in your life? Maybe you were a superstar athlete and you had an ACL injury and you battled back. I mean, what are those things that define who you are? Put that in a video. That becomes part of your portfolio. Well, I had a friend of mine, Chip McLean, whose daughter just graduated from Purdue last year, and she was trying to get a teaching job. I think it was elementary or junior high, and she wasn't really picky about where she went. She wanted a job. She majored in elementary ed. And I suggested this to him. He went home and they created a video. She had 5 job offers. And this was in a teaching jobs are a little hard to come by. They're not just falling off trees, but she positioned herself differently. She put a resume together, talked about her story, talked about why she majored in teaching in elementary ed, what she hopes to achieve with it. She had 5 job offers, and she had a lot of interviews because she was different than just everybody else who would send a resume. Now, I don't know that she made more money because of those job offers, but it sure was fun to do. And now she's picking. She's saying, I don't like that school. No, I love this school right here. This is where I'm going. Versus, I got nobody else, so I got to go to this school. If you don't do video well, find somebody at Depauw who does video. There's plenty of people around, I presume, who are at the TV station. And say, look, I want to do a little 2 or 3 minute portfolio of me, a little video, and put it on your website or on a blog or on LinkedIn. You can put those on LinkedIn, can't you? So put it right there. You have to get in, you have to stand out. We have this term that if you follow us on the Advanced Selling Podcast or in our blog, we talk about break from the pack. You've got to break from the pack. You've got to break from everybody else who's out there doing the same thing. You've got to change the game. Change the game and then get in the game. I guess if you change the game, you're actually already in the game, aren't you? Anyway. Okay, questions on that? Lessons? Anything appeal to you? Anything scare the heck out of you? This video like put you off and throw you into like a little sweat? Then that's exactly what you should do. Whatever you're feeling uncomfortable with up here is exactly where you should start. Okay, lessons. President, anything with you? It's all just happy malarkey, isn't it, for you? You're already doing all this. All right. Back table. Anything? Any lessons here, anybody? We're going table by table now. So get ready. It's coming to you guys next. Yeah.
So I guess I've learned to like stay organized and like be ready, like don't just go into stuff like not knowing what you're gonna do. Just have everything ready to go. Like can't just show up to an interview with like no like questions or anything. You gotta like be organized and like tell them about yourself. Like have the questions written out probably.
Yeah. Yeah. Have questions written out. Have an agenda. If you show up in an interview with me and you say, Mr. Caskey, thanks for having me in today. Hope you don't mind. I've got an agenda, some things I'd like to ask. I'm thinking, wow, this guy's buttoned up. I'm not thinking, what an oddball he is. I'm thinking, this is the kind of person I want to have on my team, somebody who's prepared, who's planned out, who's deliberate. I would always have, anytime I do an interview, have it, it could be something like this. It could be a little red and black. It could be a nice portfolio, but have something so you can start to write. You can take notes. Okay, good. That's good. Over this table. Yeah.
Kind of learn to like diversify yourself, whether like having a video or something that will make you stand out in an interview.
Yeah. Yeah. Hang on a second. Can you hold the thought because I got something I might want to say here. I don't know. I think I do. Yeah. It's good. Video. No, I was thinking about going down the path of, at some point in the next 10 years, every company on the planet is going to have a video studio. We do. We're a small world. We're less than $1 million. We got a video studio. Why do we have that? Because that's how we communicate with the world. So even by you doing that, I'm not suggesting you should go into video, but even doing that tells me as the hiring manager, this guy's thinking ahead. This guy's thinking differently about what work is. So even if you're not in that, even if this is not a television job you're going after, it doesn't matter. That's how we communicate. Okay, good job. Yeah.
Well, I really like that you brought up portfolios because I didn't know that was a viable option. And for somebody like me, I hate the notion that a one-page resume is
I hate it.
the only thing that's going to define me in the
I hate
eyes
it.
of so many people. So the ability to present yourself in many different ways.
That's good. Think about how crazy that is. And again, I know everybody in here, maybe people come in here and they talk about how to build a resume, what kind of font to use, and whether you use shaded lines or dark lines. I'm not saying that's wrong, but 22 years of experience and expertise and leadership and athletics and study, and it all gets down to one page of 12-point font. I mean, it's crazy. You have to have that, but have this linked to it. Now you've got something. Because you will probably be one of the few that have it even the next 4 or 5 years. It's slowly moving in that direction. At some point, they'll all be video resumes. This table. The ladies' table. You miss your other lady here? What happened to her?
Actually,
He's the lady. Couldn't stand it, huh? You had to leave the break from the pack, as we say. Okay, what about here? Anything for you guys?
I mean, it was already said, but pretty much try to find a way to make yourself stand out and make yourself more of an individual.
Yeah. Yeah. What is your story?
My story? What do you mean?
The way you will stand out is to be better at telling your story. You have a story of your life. I'm not saying to tell it here, but you've got a story. You had mountains and you've had valleys. And there's nothing wrong with either. In fact, there's storytellers who will tell you that you always start with the valleys when you're telling your story. Think about any great movie. Does it start at the top where the hero's on top of the mountain? No. Where does it always start? The villain is getting ready to stab the hero, and at the very last minute, somebody comes up, and that's how Sorry, thanks for the water. I need to drink some now. So what is your story? How'd you get to Depauw?
Really want to? Oh, okay. Well, my grandfather and my father both went here, so it's always been in my family. And when I came and visited, it just felt right.
Okay, all right. And what's your area of interest?
Theater.
Okay. And how did you arrive at that? Obviously, you've probably been experienced that all through high school.
Yes, my whole life.
When did you start?
When I was like 8.
And what did you do when you started? Was it a play in front of your family, or was there some kind of form?
That far back, that was when I was like 3. Perform in front of my family, and I did my first show when I was in 3rd grade.
Okay. And what is there about theater that is intriguing to you? I mean, you've been at it now for 18 years, 7. What is there about it that just juices you?
I love performing on stage and being able to be different characters and different situations that you wouldn't be in yourself.
Okay, all right. And you like that because, does it give the audience, do you like having the audience laugh and get pleasure out of it? Or is there more, heck with the audience, it's just about what's happening inside of me, or is there a combination?
I like the audience, I just love performing.
Okay. If they like it, fine. If they
Or
don't.
watching performances.
Okay. So somewhere in her story, whether she ends up going to be a Broadway star or not, needs to be the story of theater and story of her performance. You know, I would even suggest when you're talking to people, and again, are you going on to graduate school? Is that your plan? Or
No.
okay. Is it to explore a career there?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So there might be some positions she talks to where it's not a full-time acting position, but it might be, she might be a trainer for a large company where she has to stand up in front of people and deliver something. That's kind of acting. Excuse me. So her story needs to be a part of her. She needs to be able to bring that story out. So when someone says, well, tell me, what's your first name again?
Alyssa.
Alyssa?
Alyssa.
Tell me something about you. She won't say, well, you know, I went to college, 4-year college, Depauw and Greencastle, and my father went there, and my grandfather. She's going to start with, well, the best way to define me is when I was 8 years old, or 3 years old. One of my first experiences that I remember is I was performing in front of my family. And when I was doing that, I even remember to this day how good that felt. It felt so good that I did it in junior high, high school, college. Now, what does that tell me about her? Tell me she's a theater major, but what else does it tell me? Huh? She's passionate. What else? Huh? She's persistent. She's committed. You don't do something for 15 years unless you're committed to it. So I can assume that if she's committed to that, guess what? She's probably committed to other things. That's not the only... Excuse me. Cut. Take two. Sorry. I feel better than I sound. Let's put it that way. So you tell that story. Now, what happens to me as the listener? When I hear that story, what do I sense? I sense those things. But what does that do for me as a human being when I hear her story? Not my story, her story.
Makes you think your story?
Yeah. Makes me think of my story. Makes me think, you know, I was 5 years old once, and I used to pretend like I was a disc jockey, and this is a true story. And you know, I never did pursue that. I mean, I'm not thinking out loud. I'm just thinking, you know, that's pretty darn cool. And well, tell me what else you're interested in. Now I'm coming at you because you embody my story. My story is all wrapped up in your story. So, like you say, we kind of co-create this together. Don't be afraid of telling your story. That's the first thing I would encourage you to do on an interview. They say, well, tell me about you. I'd go to my story. I'd remember it. I'd script it out, not read it, but I mean, I would think through that. When I was 14 years old, I was cut from my basketball team, a sport I dearly loved, and I'll never forget how I felt on that day when somebody said to me, you're not good enough to make my team. And that's the day that it all changed. Now, what's the person going to do? I'll say, okay, well, what else you good at? You're going to say, what happened? Let me pull up a chair here. What the hell happened? Now, I'm not telling this, I don't want you to tell your story so that people are, wow, that's really beautiful. I want you to tell your story, say, this is who I am. This is who I am. If you have any trouble with that, I mean, Aaron, maybe you and I can talk it, but I think this is so important. It distinguishes you from everybody else on the planet Earth because nobody has had that experience. Been other theater majors at Depauw, nobody's had that experience, whatever that experience is. So get good at your story. Tell it, think about it, look at the valleys, look at the mountains. Start at a time where someone says, wow, this tells me a lot about you that a resume will never tell me, right? Never tell me. Okay, what else? Other lessons there. Okay, we did this table. Let's come up here. Who's going to be the spokesperson here? I know she don't like me, so that's all right.
I'll do it. I liked what you said about starting where you're uncomfortable. I just applied for a job where like the video was optional, and it like really freaked me out, but I thought it'd be a good idea because it was optional, and so I did it, and I ended up getting the job.
Excellent.
It was really good.
great.
I was glad that you said that.
That's great. Yeah. Now, next time you do it, not so uncomfortable. 20th time, easy.
And it's a lot easier than you think.
It is, yeah.
I mean, you can redo it.
Plus you
and
have,
if
right.
you want.
Do it over. Yeah. That's right. That's good. Good for you. Anybody else at this table? She was your spokesperson, I know, but if anybody else, you have something?
I like the idea of like creating your own job.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
interesting.
And,
Never thought of that before.
yeah. Don't let someone talk you out of that, because they will. They'll say, well, you know what, Susie? At some point, yeah, when you're 30, 35, 40 years old, you can do it. But right now, you've got to take what you're given. BS. You do not have to take what you're given. Now, if you were looking for a marketing position and there's a marketing position open, go for it, man. But don't just leave yourself open to this. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking to go down this path and say, I refuse to take a job that's already. No. Just leave yourself open. Just be open to that. Good. Lesson?
Well, I like the whole video idea, like how it diversifies you. So it just has me thinking, like, what else you can do to step up your game and make you different from everyone else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Other than video. So that's one thing. But what else? Yeah.
To be completely different to set you apart.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you're really into a specific field, what's your area of?
Environmental management.
Okay, that's pretty specific. So you might even, oh, I know, this is a good example. There's a guy named Brandon Gerard, who's one of our clients in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He is a super high achiever, over the top. He's just a likable guy, and he is all world achievement. Here's what he did. When he was looking for a job after his senior year, he spent the summer, he wanted to be in sales, and he interviewed 10 sales managers and asked them what the #1 attribute of their top salesperson was. He recorded all these, got them transcribed, then wrote a paper on what the top 10 things were. So he just literally took one from each person. So on his interviews, he would go and he would sit down and say, yeah, thanks for inviting me in. And they'd say, well, tell me about yourself. Well, you know what, I've always wanted to be in sales, so much so that I spent this summer interviewing sales managers, and here's the report that I just wrote. Now, if a guy comes into your office like that versus a person who all they have is a resume and some distant memories of some things they've accomplished, that person gets the job, period. He said he had one interview and he got the job. Now, he should have had more than one because he might have landed in a different place, but he loved this company, he loved it, so he got the job. One interview, he got the job. Why did he get it? Because of his resume? No, because they saw in him something they wanted. So that's an example of something that's kind of weird, off the charts, but man, you do that one time, you're in. Who's going to say no to that? No, I don't want somebody who's thought too much about this. No, you've done too much work. It's a little weird, I think. We're going to find somebody who knows nothing about our business. Of course not. They're going to say, when can you start? So you got to think outside the proverbial box here. Think about things you can write, things you can produce, people you can interview, articles you can write. You might even write an article about how difficult it is or what the process is to find a job today. You know, you're going through this. This would be a great class to write an article on and say, this is what I produced. Now they say, wow, that's impressive. That's good. Okay. Any other lessons from all this? All right. We're almost out of time. I hate that. You're loving it. I'm hating it. All right. Network power. In a world where everyone can be your agent, list your network, send content down the line. And you're going to have to stop me if you've already done this networking thing. Have you spent a lot of time on networking?
No.
Okay.
No, they've listened to Doug Smith talk about happiness and careers. And
Okay, yeah.
it was pretty much interview piece. We've done resumes and then talked about interviewing yesterday. So, no.
Is there somebody coming up that's going to be talking? I don't want to do a.
You're the last.
I'm the last one. That's right. It's short. Pretty short. Yeah. Chances are, let me start over. There's an 80% chance this is going to be the future for you, is your network. Your network could be things, and the way I would look at this is I would look at it from we do a course on this for salespeople, and we say, okay, this is you here, And these are your networks. And I like to think of these as circles of people. So you've got classmates at Depauw. You've got Depauw alums, which is a huge network for you all that you need to use. Huge network. You call a Depauw alum in New York, say, hey, I just graduated from Depauw, they'll be like, when you coming in? We'd love to talk. Not, we're going to hire you, but there's an open door. You've got church and other social, affiliations back home. You've got parents and friends of parents. You've got people that maybe you played high school ball with and their parents. I mean, you've got all these clusters of networks. You wouldn't believe the power of your network if you started to write it down. Never say, I don't know anybody. No, you know a lot of people. But until you get it out on paper, there might be 15 people here you're really close to. Their parents are all network potentials. Depauw alums, I mean, maybe if you live in a sorority or fraternity house, maybe you confine it to that. It's affiliations with fraternity sororities. If you go to church, if you belong to clubs, any kind of clubs here, you would be amazed at the power of your current network without meeting one more person. You do not need to meet anybody else. I mean, you will, but just work with what you have. Then, what do you do with that network? You can't go take them all out to have coffee or for dessert. You'd be 700 pounds. So, first off, you've got to send content to this network. What I mean by that is content is anything that is a representative of your work or of your portfolio. So if you do produce an article on something, or if you write a paper, or if you do a video, that's a great thing to send to your network. It's not always about meeting and catching up and doing coffee. That takes a lot of time. And plus you're at school, you're not going to be able to run around and do that. But email and the internet is great ways to keep in touch with your network. What I would do, my assignment to you would be find your clusters of people and then identify 5 people in that cluster. Shouldn't be that hard. 5 people. And that will probably be 20 to 25 people. That's your starting point. I would send them, let's say you're a freshman, and I would send them an email and say, hey, I just wanted to update you. I'm at Depauw, my intended major is X. I'm going to be home this summer. Over the next year or so, I'm going to be starting to look at my careers or my career and my opportunities. And I would love it if sometime we could get together, and I'd love to brainstorm with you on some of the things I'm thinking. I'd really value your opinion. You send that letter out to 25 people, you'll get 10 people back like that and say, sure, when do you want to meet? I don't want to wait a year. Let's do it right now. That's how you start to network, is you take people you know. Now, they have to know who you are. You can't send this out blind, but I'm assuming if they're in your clusters that they'll know you. And just say, look, here's where I am today. I would send this out, frankly, I would send it out every 4 or 5 months. Say, oh, here's what I'm doing now. Here's what I'm doing now. I just finished a project. Hell, in 2 years, they'll say, stop sending me these letters. Just let's come work with me. I mean, you wouldn't believe it how much power that would have. Just keep people updated. Just let them know what you're working on. People do care. People do care. Adults like me want to help students like you. Now, I can't not speak for all adults, but most do. I have a lot of business friends, acquaintances who are business owners who would love to come in and do that. They would love to network. They would love it. Don't forget that you have something they need. What? No, it's not cheap labor. You have something, you as a graduate, you at 22 as a senior graduate, you have something they need. What is it? Several things, but what is one? Go ahead. A different perspective, a youthful perspective, a modern perspective. I know a lot of business owners who are in their 40s and 50s and early 60s. They're trying to figure out, how do we take this business and move it down a generation or two? They would love to have you in their business. You got to do the right strategies to get there, but you do have something to add. You have value to bring. Do not ever catch yourself thinking to yourself or saying to anybody else, you know, what do I bring? I'm just a 22-year-old, first job. Stop that. That's baggage. That's mental baggage. They want your perspective. They want your youthful enthusiasm. They want your social media skills. They really want your social media skills. They really do, as long as you have them, but they do. They want fresh faces. They want somebody who can build a life around the business and who can be there for a while. We're tired of hiring, and hope nobody in the room takes it. I'm tired of hiring 40-year-olds who do not want to change, who do not want to learn anything. And I say it, I've had 2 or 3 that I've hired, but I don't want to hire those people. I want to hire 22 to 30-year-olds who are committed, passionate, willing to change, willing to learn, want to try new things. So keep that in the back of your mind that, yeah, you do have something valuable. You decide, though, where you're going to place those skills. Okay, I'm going to shut up. I've talked way too much. So questions. We got a few minutes left. Are we okay if we go 5 over?
Oh, no,
It's
you're fine.
2:30 and, okay.
You're fine.
So Q&A. I've already kind of got a sense that you've learned some things here. So is there anything that I've said that you say, now, Bill, go 2 or 3 minutes down deeper into this? I'm happy to stay until we answer all the questions. Or professors, if you have anything.
So you guys are all going to feel really comfortable networking, right? So questions, ask him. He is here, and he's also a parent. And so, you know, he's committed to helping. I mean, and you are.
Yeah.
And so, what is a question? I'll
I'm not getting paid a lot. Oh, I'm not getting paid anything for this. So, but I'm here, and so thank you.
Well, we've tried the best.
No. I'm just kidding.
Okay, but the first thing is, and sometimes this happens, so I have to say the majority of the time it does not happen with Depauw alumni. They aren't your only network. But what happens if you call someone and you can feel it? They're not either, maybe it's not a good time to talk to that person. You have suggestions.
What do you do when you're on the phone with them and you kind of get that feeling? You always acknowledge that. So if you call me and I say, yeah, well, great, you know what, I'm not really hiring right now, you have to acknowledge, say, look, I'm sorry if I led you to believe that was the purpose of this call, my fault. I was just looking to network and to catch up maybe sometime, but believe me, this can wait. I know you're busy and have a business to run. You let me off the hook, and what will I do? I'll come back then and say, click, no. I'll come back and say, no, I'm sorry. I've just got a lot of stuff going on. I'll tell you what, call me the 1st of February, and let's set up a time then. There will be a clear future after that. You have to take me off the hook. You can't rib me for not wanting to talk to you because I've got other people to talk to as well. So you just have to always acknowledge. If you're feeling like they're a little cool, just acknowledge. Say, look, I know I probably bothered you, and sorry to do this, and I'm not looking for a job. I'm not looking for anything. I'm just looking to maybe meet sometime. That's all. Don't come back. But I think even as important as that is, you also have to get your upfront down. When they pick up the phone, what are you going to say? Hello, it's Bill Caskey. Let's go, Allison. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that to you. So, write this down. We'll do it right now. You'll have something to leave with. And hi, this is first and last name, obviously. Now, I called a guy today who I had met once, but I don't have much of a relationship with, I wouldn't say, but his name is spelled P-F-E-R-S-C-H-Y, Fershey. But there's a silent P, there's a silent C, there's all sorts of silent things going on there. So when I put in his name I tried to put his name into my iPhone, it came up with all sorts of weird recommendations, like furry and I don't know, pepper, and so he said, hello, this is Dean. I said, hey, I just tried to put your name in the iPhone, and I came up with like 5. You should do a reality show on what comes up when people try to put your name. And he just started laughing. He thought that was the funniest thing. He goes, I know. He goes, you wouldn't believe when I go out to put my name in at a place for dinner. They're like, they can never get the name right. He goes, I owe my parents one for that. And the conversation was totally different. Now, I don't expect you to do that. It kind of takes a little bit of courage to do that, but don't worry about that. If you called me and said, hey, something like that, then I would immediately have a rapport with you that was more than just, hello, this is Bill Caskey, nice to talk to you, let me tell you why I'm calling. But I don't expect you to do that. But if you have that kind of relationship with someone, go ahead and do it. Or you know that, now I met this person once a long time ago, so I knew he was a kind of a yuck it up kind of dude, and he'd be willing to play with that. But don't be afraid of doing that. That really tells me that you're on my level, that you're not here trying to plead with something. But I'm not suggesting that for this. But if you do it, don't worry about it. So, hi, my name is first name. Let me tell you why I'm calling. Let me tell you why I'm calling. Now, I'm assuming this scenario is one that's sort of cold. It's not like your neighbor. If it's your neighbor, you're probably not going to introduce yourself first and last name. But I still think you should say, let me tell you why I'm calling today. And then you tell them. You give them a sentence or two of background. I'm exploring right now internships, and I'm looking at next summer. And your name came up as someone who I might want to talk to. So whatever you're doing, I'm exploring internships, I'm getting ready to graduate, I'm a sophomore right now at Depauw, and I'm starting to look at career choices. Whatever the reason is you're calling, you have to tell them right up front. When you say, let me tell you why I'm calling, what does that person on the other end immediately do? They listen. They're present. If you call and say, hey, this is John, how you doing? I'm thinking, who is John? Yeah, but I don't want to talk to somebody. No, but if you say, this is John Smith, let me tell you why I'm calling. I'm a student at Depauw. Your name was given to me. If you got their name somehow, you need to tell them that. Your name was given to me by Bill Caskey. And the purpose of my call today, blah, blah, blah. So it's a great way. Hi, this is so-and-so. Let me tell you why I'm calling, how you got their name, if that is relevant, and why and then, of course, why you are calling. Now, if you're interested in meeting with them, I wouldn't say, I'm hoping that you can spend 20 minutes with me. I get that call a lot from people. And if I spent 20, 30 minutes with all the people who called me to spend 20, 30 minutes, I wouldn't be able to work. So you have to be okay if there's nothing there. Because they may say, you know what, I want to talk to you. Now's not a good time. Let's connect in May. Or let's connect as you get closer to the internship or whatever. So you just have to be flexible. But if you say, let me tell you why I'm calling, they'll listen. You can say, let me tell you why I'm calling, and then tell them why you're calling, and then talk about how you got their name. But those are the four main ingredients. Tell you why I'm calling, how I got your name. Okay? Now, if you're trying to meet somebody, then I would probably say, you know, at some point in the future, not can you meet me before Friday, but at some point in the future, I'd love the opportunity to get together and chat a little bit and talk to you about what I'm doing, find out, you know, what's going on at your company. I know you're busy. You can acknowledge that. You always acknowledge that this is not their main goal in life, is to take care of you. They have a job. The more you push back, here's the rule, the more you push back, the more likely they are to come to you and say, no, that's fine. No, I know. No, I'm busy, but I always have time for Depauw students. One thing I didn't realize that I realize now that you need to realize is that Depauw students in the marketplace around Indiana and the surrounding states, you have a fairly high stature going in. You have a higher stature than other schools to be nameless, to remain nameless and anonymous. You have a pretty high stature. Use it. People know Depauw. I know a guy who's in the financial planning, but he only hires Depauw graduates. Dan Burnett. He only hires Depauw graduates. Well, that's pretty nice. It's nice to know that. So does that help on networking? So that's just the initial, that's just the introduction. Then at some point you're going to have a conversation. Well, what's your major? Well, my major is this, and I've been performing since the time I was 3, and I just love getting up in front of people, and it's one of my passions in life is to bring energy and joy to rooms, or whatever you say, and that sounds kind of corny, doesn't it? But, you know, try it. Maybe it'll work. Seinfeld. And then have a discussion. And be deliberate, and don't say like, and don't say you know, and don't say so, and don't say okay, unless you mean so and okay. Anything else? Liz?
This might be slightly off topic. What if they want to start on their strategy, but they're not 100% sure of their end goal yet? Do you have advice on that?
Okay. That's a great question. Great question. And that is a great question. Did I say it's a great question? That's a very good question. The end goal is about vision. And that is very hard for people. It's hard for people to say, okay, 3 years out, where are you going to be?
Law school.
Oh, you do? So you know that. So she knows that. She thinks she knows that. She thinks she knows that. A lot of people start to go to law school, and then they get there and say, that's not for me. But I'll just take her at her word. She knows what she wants to do. If you don't have a postgraduate endeavor, then it's hard to say where I want to be. But you can say, look, I want to be in a company where I'm valued, where I'm paid for my value, where it's fun to work, where they're innovate. You can start to define the attributes of that job very clearly. What do you want? Because then if a job comes along and I say, well, it's not you anymore because you're going to law school. What's it, Elisa?
Alyssa, yeah.
Alyssa, sorry. Say, Alyssa, I've got a job. I've got a $15,000 a year job sitting in a fluorescent lit cubicle, working 8 to 5, cold calling people in New Delhi. And you'll have to learn Indian. You're going to say, yeah, thanks a lot, no thanks. The clearer you are about your vision, the easier it is to say, no, not for me. Now, I'm not saying don't go interview, because sometimes maybe there's other things there, but you'll be able, it's easy to say no when you are clear on your vision. So don't worry about, I can see myself at Procter & Gamble, sitting on the 5th floor in Cincinnati overlooking Forest Park. It doesn't have to be that specific, but it does have to be about what do you want to be doing? Who do you want to be surrounded by? Do you want to be surrounded by a bunch of 60-year-old has-beens like me? Or do you want to be surrounded by young, bright, innovative people? So whatever floats your boat, whatever really excites you, that's what I would write in that there. And that is something you guys can talk about a little bit after I leave, but yeah.
I guess what would you suggest for first-year students or people who don't really have much on their college resume quite yet, but are eager to find internships or like making your resume viable to other people, but you just don't have much on it yet?
Okay. Well, I don't think you're expected to have much on it. You can always reach back a little bit in time and look at high school if you had some high school things that were important, because you're still at an age where if you look back 2 or 3 years, you're in high school now. So did you do anything from a leadership standpoint there? Did you produce anything, write anything, participate in anything? You don't have to answer that. But that's one option, is to go back a little ways. But if you're applying for an internship, are you applying for one this summer?
I'm
Looking, okay. I think it's more important for that to be, what do you want to do? What do you think you're good at? What do you bring value around? What is your area of interest or area of major, do you think?
I
Haven't decided? Okay.
Yeah, but either environmentally or law or government.
Okay. Okay. So you might look at those 3 or 4 things and say, what is there about those things? So you've got, what is it? You've got law, environmental, and regulatory, government. So right there in that sweet spot where all these things cross, what is there about all those that is interesting? You might even make a list of, what is there that interests me about government, about law, about environmental, and somewhere in there there's some commonalities, there's some common themes. And then that's how I would position myself on the resume. Because if you go too deep into one, like say, look, I want to work in the government, and an environmental company sees your resume and say, well, she don't work here, she wants to work in government. Whoa, 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 wait a minute. I would focus on the attributes of that job before I'd focus on the actual path of that job. So I guess a good way to add, just what are you good at? What do you like doing? What do you get lost in? What's the thing that of all things you do here at college you just love? You just love doing. And think about that as maybe a way to position yourself, because that's really what this is positioning. One more. One more cue that I hope I have an A for. Yes, sir.
What is the most valuable trait you could say in a potential employee that you would like to see?
Malleable or valuable? Oh, that's a good one. Well, I think the trait is, are you willing to learn? Are you a fast learner? Are you open to learning, to feedback, to, you know, if you go into a company and you're at a place where there's 4 people that do what you do, and this person over here is like heads and shoulders, she makes more money, she's the most amazing person, she's an industry leader, and you're on this team, I'd be over at her house occasionally, announced of course, not just show up, saying, how do you do it? How can I be like you? How can I learn this? A friend of mine, Bo Eason, who played football in the NFL, he's now a speaking coach. He's a guy that we work with in our firm. Once he retired from the NFL, he went to Broadway. And he had a play in mind called Runt of the Litter. And it was about his life growing up as the youngest of 6 kids. And his oldest brother was a football stud. Tony Eason played for the New England Patriots back in the 90s. And he's a high achiever, Bo is. And he said, if I'm going to go to New York and be an actor, what do I need to do? I need to find how to go from nowhere to being the best. He always wants to be the best at whatever he does. So he figured out a way to get a hold of Al Pacino. He had an agent who had a friend, and they finally, Al Pacino, you know who Al Pacino is? Great actor. Invited him over to his house, spent 3 hours with Bo, talking about, here's the acting coach you should hire, here's the Alexander technique coach, here's how to tell a story, here's your vocal coach. These are the people that will help you. And after Bo got done and just made a lot of notes, he said, who else, do people always ask you this? He goes, I've been at this 40 years. He said, you're the first. Now, isn't that weird that a guy who's at top of his game, nobody comes to and says, how do you do it? Now, part of that is because they can't get to him or think that he would not give them time, but he said to Bo, I'd be happy to work with young actors. I mean, that's my profession. So I would say that's a long answer to the question of learning. Are you open for feedback? Are you open to learning? And it's easy to say, yes, I am, but are you? And if you are, I would put that on my resume. I would figure out a way to get that in the conversation. Because everything's changing. Jobs that, what's the study that said 50% of the jobs that you will have when you graduate from college aren't even invented yet. They're not even named on an organizational chart, which is another reason we want to talk about problem solving versus slot hiring. They're not even out there. But when you start to get out in the market, these jobs have to have people who can learn quickly. So I would say it's number 1. Does that help you? Yeah. Are you a pretty quick learner? Curious and yeah. Sure. I think curiosity is one of those things, and kind of setting your ego aside and saying, you know, Allison, I think I'm better than her, but her results are better than mine, so I better go find out what she does. I think that's a critical component. And very few adults can do that because they think that's beneath them in some way, which is really weird. I had a guy who was #1 salesperson at a company. He earned 4 times the income of all the other 19 salespeople. In other words, he made like $290,000 a couple years ago. The next closest made like 75. And it was stack ranked. Everybody knew what he made. Everybody knew well, they knew what they brought in sales. They didn't know income. But everybody could see that, well, you know, this Fred here, he's an amazing performer. And then there's the rest of us. And in 2 years, he never had one of these people come to him and say, what the hell are you doing? How are you so successful? And he shook his head. He goes, it's amazing. I would have been glad to tell him, you know, the rising tide lifts all boats. It wasn't a competition. Not one of these people went to him. Isn't that weird? Don't do that. If you're Fred, be willing to share it with the rest. If you're the rest, go to Fred. There's a book out called Mastery by Robert Greene. He wrote a book a couple years ago called 48 Laws of Power, and this is called Mastery. And it's about how masters become masters. And a lot of mastery is about apprenticeships, protégés, mentorships, and coaching. It's finding someone who's already done what you want to do and just suck the knowledge right out of them, because they can quicken that process. And so many times we don't have mentors in our lives who can do that. So I'd say if you have an area of interest, if you have environmental, go get a mentor who's in the environmental business. Have them teach you the business. Maybe you'll find that's not a good path for you. But either way, having an apprentice or a mentor, informal mentor is really good. Helps you quicken. All right. Thank you so much for inviting me in. I hope this was useful to you and valuable. And we have a podcast called the Advanced Selling Podcast that has an app on the iPhone. So if any of you are interested in some of these concepts, now the concepts that I talk about on there are more about business and selling, but it's all the same stuff. You're still going to be selling yourself. So there would be some pertinent information. It's 10 minutes a week, and it's fairly funny sometimes. It's supposed to be funny all the time, but it's funny sometimes. Yeah. So anyway, enjoyed it. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.